She was hungry, exhausted, and barely surviving another day on the streets of the city. Yet when she saw a weak old woman shivering on the roadside, she did the unthinkable. She gave away the little food she had and chose compassion over survival. What she didn't know was that this fragile old woman was hiding a truth so powerful it would change her life forever. This is not a story about money. It's a story about humanity. The city never truly slept. Even at dawn, when the sky was still a pale gray, the streets breathed with quiet suffering, people rushing to jobs they hated, horns echoing like tired sighs, and shadows of lives barely holding together. On one such morning, Aisha sat on the cold pavement outside a closed bakery, clutching a thin shawl around her shoulders. Aisha was 32, though hardship had etched lines on her face that made her look older. Her husband had died 3 years ago in a factory accident, leaving her with debt, grief, and no one to turn to. Since then, survival had become her full-time job. She cleaned houses when she could, washed dishes at roadside stalls, and on days when work vanished, she relied on quiet patience and prayer. That morning, she had only one piece of flatbread in her cloth bag. She had saved it from the night before, telling herself she would eat it slowly to make it last. Her stomach cramped as she thought about it, but she ignored the pain, as she always did. As she stood up to leave, her eyes caught sight of someone across the street. An old woman sat slumped against a bus stop bench. Her clothes were clean but worn, her gray hair tied loosely, trembling hands folded in her lap. She looked lost, not like the usual beggars or street dwellers. There was something fragile about her, something quietly broken. Aisha hesitated. Helping others when you had nothing was a dangerous habit. Still, her feet moved before her mind could argue. "Amma, are you okay?" Aisha asked softly, kneeling beside her. The old woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were tired but sharp, carrying a depth that surprised Aisha. I think I sat down for a moment," the woman whispered. "My legs don't seem to agree with me anymore." Her voice shook, not from fear, but from weakness. Aisha noticed her lips were dry, her breathing shallow. "Have you eaten today?" The old woman shook her head. "I don't remember." That was all it took. Aisha reached into her bag and pulled out the flatbread. She tore it into 2 uneven pieces, instinctively giving the larger half to the old woman. "Please eat," Aisha said, pressing it gently into her hand. The old woman stared at the bread, then at Aisha. "And you?" "I'll manage," Aisha replied quickly, forcing a small smile. The old woman took a slow bite, her hands trembling. Aisha watched closely, making sure she was okay. She felt an unexpected ache in her chest, not pity, but recognition. This could be her one day. Alone. Invisible. "What's your name?" the old woman asked between bites.
Aisha.
You can call me Amma," the woman said softly. Aisha smiled. Everyone deserves someone to call them Amma. They sat in silence for a moment, the city moving around them like a river. When the old woman finished eating, she looked stronger, but still unsteady. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Aisha asked. The old woman hesitated. "I think I got lost." Aisha didn't ask questions. She knew what it felt like to be lost in more ways than one. "Come with me," she said gently. "I clean houses nearby. I can at least get you some water and let you rest." The old woman studied Aisha's face, as if searching for something hidden. Finally, she nodded. They walked slowly. Aisha adjusted her pace, offering her arm. With every step, she sacrificed time she could have spent looking for work, but her heart felt strangely calm. At a small public tap near a mosque, Aisha helped the old woman drink water. She even wet her own scarf to cool her forehead. "You're very kind," the old woman said quietly. Aisha shrugged. Kindness doesn't cost money. The old woman smiled faintly at that, as if the words meant more than Aisha realized. As the sun rose higher, Aisha knew she would miss her cleaning job that day. That meant no pay, no dinner. Yet when she looked at the old woman sitting peacefully beside her, something inside her whispered that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Unnoticed by Aisha, the old woman's eyes filled with quiet tears, not of weakness, but of deep, aching gratitude. She observed every detail: the worn sandals, the empty bag, the gentle hands that gave without hesitation. And in her heart, she made a silent promise. This kindness would not be forgotten. By midday, the sun had grown harsh, pressing down on the city like an unforgiving weight. Aisha wiped sweat from her forehead as she guided Alma toward a shaded area near a small park. Children's laughter echoed faintly from a distance, a sound that felt almost foreign to Aisha's ears, as if it belonged to another life she once knew. Sit here, Alma, Aisha said gently, helping her onto a low concrete bench beneath a neem tree. This shade will help. Alma lowered herself slowly, breathing a little heavier now. You didn't have to do all this for me, Beta, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You've already given me food. Aisha smiled, though her own legs felt weak. If I leave you alone now, my heart won't let me sleep tonight. Alma looked at her closely. In all her 70 years, she had met many people, powerful ones, greedy ones, polite ones pretending to be kind. But this woman was different. There was no calculation in her eyes, no hope of reward, only concern. Do you have family? Alma asked softly. Aisha's smile faded, but she answered honestly. Not anymore. My husband passed away. We never had children. I'm sorry, Alma said, reaching out and gently touching Aisha's hand. Aisha swallowed. It's okay. Life teaches you to live with empty spaces. They sat quietly for a while. Aisha noticed Alma's hands trembling again. Are you feeling dizzy? She asked. A little, Alma admitted. Without a second thought, Aisha stood up. Wait here. I'll be back. She walked to a nearby tea stall and spoke softly to the owner. After a brief exchange, she returned holding a small cup of sweet tea. It was something she normally avoided buying. Every rupee mattered, but today, her hands didn't hesitate. Drink slowly, she said, blowing on the cup. Alma's eyes widened. You're spending money on me? Aisha laughed lightly. It's just tea. But Alma knew better. She saw the way Aisha counted coins before handing them over, the way her fingers lingered as if letting go hurt. As Alma sipped the tea, strength slowly returned to her body. She straightened a little, her posture, changing in a subtle way that Aisha didn't notice. Beneath the fragile exterior lived a woman who once commanded rooms with her presence. You're not from the streets, Aisha said suddenly, her intuition speaking. I can tell. Alma smiled faintly. Life can turn anyone into a stranger, Beta. Aisha nodded. She didn't push further. As the afternoon stretched on, Aisha realized she was running out of time. She still hadn't earned anything that day, and the night would be difficult. Yet when she thought about leaving Alma alone again, fear twisted her stomach. Alma, she said hesitantly, I live in a small rented room nearby. It's nothing special, but you can rest there until you feel better. Alma looked genuinely surprised. You would take a stranger into your home? It's not a palace, Aisha said with a small chuckle. But it's safe. For a moment, Alma didn't respond. Her eyes grew distant, as if memories were flooding back. Memories of big houses, guarded gates, and a son who rarely had time. I would like that, she finally said. Aisha's room was barely large enough for two people to stand comfortably. The paint was peeling, the mattress thin, the fan old and noisy. Yet Aisha cleaned the space quickly, spreading her only clean bedsheet for Alma.
Please lie down, she said.
I'll sit here. And where will you sleep? Alma asked. Aisha waved her hand dismissively. I'll manage on the floor. Alma's chest tightened. This woman had nothing, and yet she kept giving. As Alma rested, Aisha sat near the door, staring at the fading light outside. Her stomach growled loudly now. She pressed her hand against it, embarrassed. Alma opened her eyes. You haven't eaten. I did earlier. Aisha lied gently.
Alma knew it was a lie.
Slowly, she reached into her purse, a small, elegant purse Aisha hadn't noticed before, and pulled out a folded note. Take this, Alma said. Aisha immediately shook her head.
No, Alma.
Please don't insult me. Alma smiled sadly. I'm not insulting you. I'm asking you to help me feel less helpless. Aisha hesitated. Her pride battled her hunger. Finally, she took the money, but only after tearing the note in half. This is enough, she said firmly. Alma watched her, tears quietly sliding down her temples. That evening, as Alma slept peacefully for the first time in days, Aisha sat awake, listening to the distant noise of the city. She didn't know that somewhere across town, a powerful man was searching desperately, his voice sharp with fear, his eyes burning with worry. He was looking for his mother, and destiny had placed her in the care of the poorest woman with the richest heart. Night settled slowly over the city, wrapping the narrow streets in dim orange light. Aisha lay awake on the thin floor mat, her arm tucked beneath her head, listening to Alma's steady breathing from the mattress beside the wall. Each breath reassured her, yet her own thoughts refused to rest. She wondered who Alma really was. There was something about her calm manners, the way she spoke, the dignity she carried even in weakness. Alma didn't complain. She didn't ask questions. She observed, quietly and deeply, as if every small detail mattered. At some point during the night, Alma stirred. Aisha, she whispered. Aisha immediately sat up. Alma, are you okay? Alma nodded slowly. I just had a bad dream. Aisha moved closer, instinctively placing a comforting hand on her arm. You're safe here. Alma looked at her hand, then up at Aisha's face. In that simple moment, something inside the old woman cracked. She had lived in luxury all her life, surrounded by staff, drivers, and security, but never had anyone touched her with such simple, genuine care. Why are you like this? Alma asked quietly. Aisha blinked. Like what? So kind, even when life has been so unkind to you. Aisha thought for a long moment. Because if I become cruel too, she said softly, then what's the difference between me and my pain? Alma closed her eyes, tears slipping down into her hair. The next morning, Aisha woke early. She gently covered Alma with her shawl and slipped out to look for work. Hunger pressed hard now, but she pushed it aside. She found a small cleaning job nearby and worked quickly, her thoughts never leaving the old woman resting in her room. When she returned, Alma was sitting up, looking stronger. You didn't tell me you were leaving, Alma said. Aisha smiled apologetically. I didn't want to wake you. They shared a simple breakfast, tea and a piece of bread Aisha had bought with the little money she earned. She gave most of it to Alma again. As they ate, Alma asked softly, if you had one wish, Aisha, just one, what would it be? Aisha paused. No one had asked her that in years. I would like, she said slowly, to live without fear. Fear of hunger. Fear of tomorrow. Alma nodded, as if committing every word to memory. Later that day, a black luxury car rolled slowly down the narrow street outside Aisha's neighborhood. It looked wildly out of place among the bicycles and rickshaws. Inside the car sat a man in his early 40s, his jaw tense, his eyes scanning every face. Armin Qureshi, CEO of one of the largest technology conglomerates in the country. Known for his sharp mind, cold discipline, and ruthless business instincts. But today, there was nothing powerful about him. Only desperation. Check every street, he ordered into his phone. She wouldn't go far on foot. For 2 days, his mother had been missing. She had left the house quietly, refusing security, wanting air, she had said. By the time they realized she hadn't returned, panic had taken over. Back in Aisha's room, Alma suddenly grew restless. "My son," she murmured. Aisha looked up. "Do you want me to help you find him?" Alma smiled faintly. "He'll find me." As if summoned by fate, there was a knock at the door. Aisha froze. No one ever knocked on her door. She opened it cautiously. Outside stood a man in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 guards. His eyes widened when he saw the old woman behind Aisha. "Mother," he breathed. Alma stood up slowly. Armin stopped himself, emotion tightening his throat. He rushed forward and knelt before her, holding her hands as if afraid she might disappear again. "I've been searching everywhere," he said hoarsely. Aisha stared, stunned. Her legs felt weak. "Mother?" The guard stepped back respectfully. The air in the room changed, heavy, charged. "This young woman," Alma said calmly, placing her hand on Aisha's shoulder, "saved me." Armin turned to look at Aisha for the first time. He took in her simple clothes, the bare room, the thin mattress. "She took care of you?" he asked. Alma nodded. "She gave me her food,
Her time.
her home." Armin's chest tightened. In his world, kindness was usually bought. This was different. "Why?" he asked Aisha, his voice gentler now. "Why help a stranger?" Aisha swallowed hard.
Because she needed me.
There was no hesitation, no pride. For the first time in years, Armin felt something shift inside him. This was not charity. This was humanity. The room felt impossibly small now, as if the walls themselves were listening. Aisha stood near the door, her hands clenched tightly in front of her, unsure of where she belonged in this sudden collision of worlds. The man who had just knelt before the old woman was clearly someone important. His posture, his confidence, even his silence carried weight. Armin slowly helped his mother sit back down on the mattress. "You should have told me you were leaving," he said, his voice controlled, but trembling underneath. "I wanted to remember how the world feels without protection," Alma replied calmly. "And I wanted to know if kindness still exists when there is nothing to gain." Armin followed her gaze to Aisha. "You found your answer," he said quietly. Alma nodded. "I found more than that." Armin turned fully toward Aisha. "My name is Armin Qureshi," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." Aisha lowered her eyes. "You don't have to. I didn't do it for thanks." "I know," he replied softly. "That's what makes it rare." He looked around the room again. The cracked floor, the single bulb hanging from a wire, the empty corner where a cupboard should have been. His throat tightened. "My mother is not well," Armin continued. "She needs medical care. I need to take her home." Aisha nodded quickly, relief and sadness mixing inside her. "Of course." As Alma stood up, she suddenly reached for Aisha's hands, holding them firmly. "You've reminded me of something I lost," she said. "Promise me you won't change." Aisha's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to be anyone else." They left moments later. The guards moved ahead, clearing the narrow lane. Neighbors peeked out of doors and windows, whispering in disbelief as the luxury car pulled away from the poorest street in the area. Aisha stood alone, watching until the car disappeared. The room felt emptier than before. That night, Aisha sat in silence, her thoughts heavy. She was happy Alma was safe, yet a strange sadness settled in her chest. She wondered if she would ever see her again, or if this was just a brief chapter meant to teach her something about fate. 3 days passed. Life returned to its familiar rhythm. Hard work, little food, quiet prayers. Aisha didn't speak of what happened. It felt unreal, like a dream she was afraid to explain. On the 4th day, there was another knock. This time, Aisha's heart pounded as she opened the door. Armin stood there alone. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. She shook her head, speechless. "I wanted to speak to you without my mother present," he continued, "because what I'm about to say is not from her, it's from me." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've built companies, bought buildings, made decisions worth millions," he said. "But I've never been able to buy what you gave my mother." Aisha remained silent. "I'd like to help you," Armin said. "Not as charity, as respect." Her back stiffened slightly. "I don't want pity." He nodded. "I know. That's why I'm offering opportunity." He explained calmly he wanted to sponsor her education in community health and social work, help her open a small women's support center near her neighborhood. A place for people like her. Like Alma. Aisha's breath caught. "Why me?" "Because you already live the values others only talk about." Tears slid down her face. Not from disbelief, but from being seen. "I need time," she whispered. "Take all the time you need," Armin said. "Kindness deserves patience." Before leaving, he placed a simple envelope on the table. "For groceries," he added quickly. "No arguments." That night, Aisha cried openly for the first time in years. Not from pain, but from hope. She didn't know it yet, but her life was already changing. Not because she helped a billionaire's mother, but because she chose humanity when no one was watching. Aisha didn't sleep much that night. The envelope lay unopened on the table, as if it carried too much weight for such a small piece of paper. Every time her eyes closed, Alma's gentle voice echoed in her mind, and Armin's words followed close behind. Opportunity, not charity. By morning, she finally opened the envelope. Inside was enough money to cover months of rent and food. Aisha sat on the floor, pressing the envelope to her chest, tears slipping down quietly. For the first time in years, fear loosened its grip. But Aisha did not rush into anything. 2 days later, she stood outside a large, elegant house surrounded by high gates. She felt painfully out of place in her simple clothes, but she held her head high. A guard led her inside, and within moments, Alma appeared, walking slowly but steadily. "Aisha," she said warmly, opening her arms. Aisha stepped forward, hugging her carefully. "Alma, you look stronger." "That's because you gave me something medicine never could," Alma replied. They sat together in the garden. Birds chirped, fountains whispered, and sunlight filtered through tall trees. Aisha had never seen such beauty up close, yet she felt no envy, only calm. Armin joined them shortly after. "Have you made a decision?" he asked gently. Aisha took a deep breath.
Yes.
"I want to learn. I want to help others the way I helped Alma. If you're offering that chance, I accept." Armin smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. "Then we'll walk this path together." Months passed. Aisha studied during the day and volunteered at shelters in the evenings. She struggled at first. Books were heavy, confidence didn't come easily, but she never gave up. Alma often sat beside her, listening, encouraging, sometimes simply holding her hand. 1 year later, a small center opened in the same neighborhood where Aisha once struggled to survive. It wasn't grand, but it was alive, with women learning skills, children laughing, and meals shared without shame. At the opening ceremony, Aisha stood nervously at the front. She spotted familiar faces from the streets, her old neighbors, and even the tea stall owner. Armin spoke briefly, but then stepped aside. "This place exists," Alma said, her voice steady, "because one woman chose kindness when she had nothing." She turned to Aisha. "True wealth is not what you keep, but what you give." Aisha felt the room blur through tears. Years later, when people asked her how her life changed so dramatically, she never mentioned billionaires or money. She simply said, "I shared my food with someone who was hungry." And in doing so, she discovered the greatest truth of all. Kindness, given without expectation, always finds its way back home. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you of something powerful. True kindness doesn't come from wealth, status, or comfort. It comes from a pure heart that chooses humanity even when it has nothing to gain. Aisha didn't know who she was helping, and that's exactly why her kindness mattered. If you believe that small acts of goodness can change lives, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to this channel for more heart-touching stories that restore faith in humanity. Because in a world that often feels cold and unfair, stories like this remind us, the richest people are not those who have the most, but those who give the most. Sparkling Heart.